Hi friends, CAT exam or non-CAT exams like XAT and IIFT and NARSI Munji, for your understanding, I'm telling you, are giving you questions on critical reasoning. So critical reasoning is an important aspect of the exam, testing its students on how well equipped they are to think logically. Critical reasoning का मतलब क्या है कि आप given text से logically कुछ conclusions draw कर सकते हो या कुछ समझ सकते हो कि वो क्या indirectly कहना चाह रहा है. Critical reasoning के questions, as I said, will appear in a lot of exams, including CAT and IFT and XAT. In this type of question, you are basically given a very short paragraph followed by a question based on the paragraph. So it's like a baby RC, baby reading comprehension. I'm looking at one such question for you to develop an understanding of how these questions are built and what does the examiner want the test taker to display in such questions. So if you see the question on the screen, it says, we'll read the question first here to understand what's the requirement. Which one of the following is an assumption required by the argument? What does that mean? Assumption, a quick definition of assumption is a statement or a thought that the writer assumed while writing. This is not reader's assumption, this is the writer's assumption. The writer assumed something while he or she was writing the passage, and the writer, because he or she assumed it, did not write this part in the passage. However, the writer definitely used this part to draw conclusions. So what is an assumption? Assumption is a link between the reason and the conclusion. Assumption is another reason that the writer did not explicitly say or write, but he or she, while writing, used that part to draw conclusions. One such question is in front of us, which is, which of the following is an assumption required by the argument? You first read the question, then you go back and read the paragraph, and then we'll evaluate the options. The current pattern of human consumption of resources, in which we rely on non-renewable resources, for example, metal ore, must eventually change. So one part that the writer comments, that the current pattern that we are consuming, what kind of resources? Non-renewable, one that cannot be renewed, like metal ore. He says current jo pattern hai, it must eventually change. Since से वो हमें एक reason देना शुरू कर रहा है. Since there is only so much metal ore available, he says, since there is limited metal ore, ultimately it is giving us a conclusion. We must either do without or turn to renewable resources to take its place. Now it is very important for an assumption question that we classify, let's highlight for ourselves 3 sentences में से हमारे कौन से sentences का क्या role है. Ultimately के बाद जो लिखा है कि हमें या तो इन मेटल और टाइप चीज़ों के साथ नॉन रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज के बिना काम चलाना पड़ेगा या हमें रिन्यूएबल पे आना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, सो वी मस्ट ईदर डू विदाउट और टर्न टू रिन्यूएबल resources to take its place. That's the conclusion. Why must we do it? Because there's limited non-renewable, because it cannot be renewed, you understand. There is limited metal ore. So there is a limited metal ore, and we must change our pattern. We must change the consumption pattern and switch to either renewable or stop doing without it. So what is the writer assuming? ये हमें metal, ये हमें non-renewable से, आपको सोचना है ये non-renewable से renewable पे shift क्यों करा रहा है? ये non-renewable को ये क्यों बोल रहा है कि use करना छोड़ दो? अब कुछ लोग बोलेंगे क्योंकि limited ही है, but limited ही है वो तो लिखा है यहाँ पर already. Assumption में हमें वो unstated part ढूंढना है, वो implicit part ढूंढना है. Let's look at the options. There are renewable resources replacement for all the non-renewable resources currently being consumed. Can we conclude about all? There are renewable resources replacement of all non-renewable. He's typically taken a metal ore example, and I believe when he's taken a metal ore example, others might fall into the category, but this all is too much of a generalization. It's an extreme answer, remember. Second, we cannot indefinitely replace exhausted non-renewable resources with other non-renewable resources. What does this option mean? This option means that what the writer is assuming that if you have a non-renewable resource which is getting exhausted, you instantly shift to either using a renewable one or you stop using it. ठीक है, तो वो बोल रहा था या तो renewable पे shift हो जाओ या फिर छोड़ दो. Which definitely meant कि हम एक non-renewable को दूसरे non-renewable से replace नहीं कर सकते ना. तभी हम क्या कह रहे हैं कि अगर ये खत्म हो जाएगा तो आप या तो renewable पे चले जाना या फिर आप इसको भूल जाना कि ये कोई चीज है. Which means एक और non-renewable से वो replace नहीं हो सकता. Isn't that already implicit in the paragraph? But it has not been talked about. So B looks like a good answer. We'll keep B. A renewable resource, if you look at option C, a renewable resource cannot be exhausted by human consumption. ऐसा तो कहीं नहीं है. Renewable resource exhaust नहीं हो रहा human consumption से. ये information relevant नहीं है मेरे आंसर के लिए, because मेरा conclusion बोल रहा है इसके बिना करना सीखो, non-renewable के बिना करना सीखो. Consumption of non-renewable resources will not continue to increase in the near future. Have we talked about the increase of non-renewable resources? Non-renewable, he's saying anyhow getting exhausted like metal ore. So will not continue to increase even if it stays the same. We are losing them. So D is again an irrelevant answer. Ultimately, we cannot do without non-renewable resources. What kind of option is this? This is completely reversing the conclusion. The conclusion is saying you have to do without it. Conclusion is saying you have to move to a renewable source. ये बोल रहा है कि non-renewable के बिना नहीं चलेगा. तो option E तो बिल्कुल reverse है. वो कह रहा है कि shift करो, ये कह रहा है उसके बिना चलेगा नहीं. अगर author मानेगा कि इसके बिना चलेगा नहीं तो वो shift करने के लिए बोल ही नहीं सकता था. So this is not the right assumption. So I repeat, the paragraph said we have limited metal ore. You either shift to a renewable source or you stop using it, which means in place of metal ore, which happens to be a non-renewable source, you cannot use another non-renewable source. That is what he assumed. That is why he was giving other options. I hope this helps you understand what a critical reasoning question requires, which is basic evaluation and logical understanding. In brief, if I tell you. I hope this question helps you in the understanding the requirement of these critical reasoning questions. Thank you so much. If you think this video was helpful and you want help with more of such questions, please write in the comment box. Also that if you learned from the video, I would request you to like and share it with your friends so that this helps them and reaches more people who are looking for such content.